Good morning. We have general questions. Question number 1, James Kelly.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to combat antisocial behaviour.
Minister Rosanna Cunningham.
Tackling antisocial behaviour and making communities safer and stronger remains a top priority for this Government. In March 2009, the Scottish Government and COSLA jointly published their framework for tackling antisocial behaviour called Promoting Positive Outcomes. This recognised that prevention, early and effective intervention and diversion should be at its heart. Our target of 1,000 extra police officers continues to be met, and this has helped deliver the lowest level of recorded crime since 1975. This includes an 8% decrease in recorded crimes of vandalism, including fire-raising and malicious mischief between 2010-11 and 2011-12. And furthermore, since 2007, over £50 million has been recovered from the proceeds of crime, and that's been invested throughout Scotland, directly benefiting over 600,000 young people. This is part of the prevention process to try and avoid them becoming involved in antisocial behaviour and offending in the first place.
James Kelly.
I thank the Minister for the answer. There is no doubt antisocial behaviour affects communities throughout Scotland. 36% are affected by it in South Lanarkshire, and 35% have a fear of crime in their neighbourhood. In checking the Government's progress in antisocial behaviour, I note they published the first annual report of the Antisocial Behaviour Framework in November 2010. However, there has been no report since then. Has the Minister given up on promoting activity to combat antisocial behaviour?
Minister. A post-implementation report on the antisocial behaviour framework will be produced later this year. The member will be happy, no doubt, to hear. But of course, the Government has taken forward a massive programme of reform since 2007 and indeed 11, which contributes to tackling antisocial behaviour and delivering improvements for the people of Scotland. We've done a number of things, including taking forward measures to address antisocial behaviour in housing, which I know is a very particular concern for a lot of people. And all of that has meant that the timing of the second report to Parliament has been attenuated somewhat. But as I indicated, it will be published later this year.
Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. On the issue of housing, can I ask the Minister to consider revisiting the process for evicting antisocial tenants, particularly where there is mixed tenure occupancy? Because certainly in my neck of the woods with Scottish Borders Housing Association, it is not operating effectively.
Minister. I am aware of the situation which is pertaining in the member's constituency. The Scottish Government has consulted on a range of proposals to toughen up the tenancy rules for affordable rented housing tenants who engage in antisocial behaviour. And these include measures to allow previous antisocial behaviour to be taken into account in the allocation of housing, antisocial tenants losing tenancy rights, and simplifying the process for evicting the worst offenders. The member may be relieved to know that the Scottish Government will be making an announcement in due course around the policy content of the forthcoming housing bill.
Question 2, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what plans it has to understand and deal with the increase in the number of school children with additional support needs.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
So the reason for the increase in the number of pupils with additional support needs in Scotland is, I think, well understood. Prior to 2010, only pupils with coordinated support plans, individual education programmes, or who were attending a special school were recorded and reported as having additional support needs. However, in 2010, this was extended to include anyone receiving additional support, regardless of whether it was under a formal plan. This accounts for the large increase in the number of pupils recorded and reported with additional support needs since 2010. The children and young people who were not previously recorded and reported as having additional support needs already received support. The difference is that their information was not collected as part of the annual census and was therefore not reported.
Murdo Fraser.
Could I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response? I know what he has to say. However, he will be aware from the statistics that even before 2010 there was a very substantial rise year on year on the number of pupils with additional support needs. And while some of this can be put down to better recognition and better diagnosis, would the Minister agree that we really need some proper scientific and medical research as to whether there are underlying societal, medical or environmental factors driving these increases, including looking, for example, at the increase in number of youngsters being identified as being on the autistic spectrum?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm glad the member accepts the reason I've given for the change in statistics. And I think it is very important to separate out the reason for the change in the statistics and statistical reporting and the issue that the member refers to. I think that the issue the member refers to is worthy of further discussion. I think it is obvious that in some areas there was and may still be an increasing trend. The problem with the reporting of this issue is that the two issues became conflated. If we can separate those out, then I am very willing to ensure that we take this issue further, and I'd be happy to make sure that the member has taken a long-term interest in this, meets with the appropriate minister, Dr Allen in the first instance, so that we can begin to discuss how we might take that forward, and I'd be happy for that to be a wider discussion.
Question number 3, Margaret McCulloch.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with NHS Lanarkshire regarding the Unscheduled Care Action Plan.
Cabinet Secretary Alex Neil.
Presiding Officer, we have put in place a £50 million action plan to improve how quickly people are seen, who treats them so that they can leave hospital as soon as they are ready, as well as improving links with other areas of healthcare so that support is in place for people to be treated at home if possible. Along with other NHS boards, we have discussed with the NHS Lanarkshire the development of the National Unscheduled Care Action Plan at a number of meetings. We have written to all NHS boards outlining requirements for development of a local action plan on unscheduled care and advising on the protocol to submit bids against the national funding that will be released. Scottish Government officials met with the unscheduled care leads of all NHS boards on the 24th of April to discuss local action plans. These plans are due to be submitted to the Scottish Government by the end of June.
Margaret McCulloch.
Can I take the opportunity to impress upon the Scottish Government the scale and urgency of the problem in accident and emergency units in Lanarkshire, where there were over 11,000 breaches of the waiting time standard last year? 51 out of 73 of the longest waits of over 12 hours, up to the middle of last month in Lanarkshire, occurred in Hare Myers Hospital. And I have continued to receive reports of patients waiting beyond before the 4-hour target and bed shortages. How exactly will the action plan help bring down excessive waits in Lanarkshire? And what assurances can the Minister provide that he has actually got a grip on the health service after months of bad reports about waiting times in Lanarkshire emergency rooms?
Cabinet Secretary.
I can assure the member I've got a grip, Presiding Officer. A number of questions in that question. First of all, in relation to Hare Myers, I have received the member's correspondence. We are investigating the matter, but I am absolutely assured that there is no inherent shortage of staffing in Hare Myers, but we are double-checking so that I can reassure the member that that is the case. Secondly, I have had a great deal of analytical work done looking at whether there is any correlation between any reduction in bed numbers overall in the areas where we have had most difficulty in accident and emergency. There is no such correlation. And thirdly, can I point out, particularly in Lanarkshire, had Labour's proposal gone ahead to close the accident and emergency at Monklands Hospital, we would have been in a terrible situation. In fact, it would have been nearly as bad as what it is under a Labour administration in Wales.
Richard Lyle.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Officer. I seem to remember, as Cabinet Secretary, that the Labour Party wanted to close Monklands A&E. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if there has been an increase in the number of A&E staff in NHS Lanarkshire in the last 5 years?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, in NHS Lanarkshire, medical HCS staff working within the emergency medicine speciality have increased from 58 in September 2008 to 66 in December 2012, an increase of 8, which is equivalent to nearly 14%. In NHS Lanarkshire, consultants working within the emergency medicine speciality have increased from 12 in September 2008 to 29 in December 2012, an increase of 17, which represents a percentage increase of 142% increase. Presiding Officer.
Question number 4, in the name of Richard Simpson, has not been lodged. The member has provided an explanation which is acceptable. Question number 5, Kenneth Gibson.
To ask the Scottish Government what improvements have been made to dental services in NHS Ayrshire and Navan since May 2007.
Cabinet Secretary Alex Neil.
Presiding Officer, NHS Ayrshire and Arn have made substantial progress in the provision of NHS general dental services since May 2007. For the period March 2007 to September 2012, the proportion of children registered with a dentist under NHS arrangements increased from 71.2% to 88.9%. For adults, the increase was from 53.2% to 83.9%. In 2007, approximately 42% of dental practices in Ayrshire and Arn were accepting new NHS patients. Currently, it is 93% of dental practices. Add the number of dentists, the number of dentists also reflects the increase in provision. As at 31st March 2007, there were 163 dentists providing NHS general dental services in Ayrshire and Arn. The comparable figure for 31st March 2012 was 212, an increase of 30%.
Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his reply in detail of the tremendous progress that has been made in provision of dental services in Ayrshire under this Government. Can I ask him what further improvements will be made to dental services in Ayrshire and Arn and what the timescale is for the delivery of such improvements?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, by the measure of the proportion of patients registered with an NHS dentist, Ayrshire and Arn is actually the leading NHS board across Scotland. The board's future plans therefore reflect the need to consolidate the successes achieved so far, as well as addressing new challenges and future oral health priorities. While continuing to promote dental registration, the board has plans to improve access for certain priority groups, such as dependent older adults, adults with additional needs and homeless people. More work is planned around developing pathways of care to enable better access to dental care for these particular groups of people. And I should say the board is also committed to the development and delivery of specialist oral health care services such as oral surgery and restorative dentistry, with greater focus on these services being provided in a primary care setting.
Question number 6, Linda Fabiani.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what the process is to appeal a historic finding of the Lands Tribunal for Scotland.
Minister Rosanna Cunningham.
There is a right of appeal to the Court of Session against any tribunal decision within 42 days of that decision. If an individual wishes to consider raising an appeal out with this period, then independent legal advice should be sought.
Linda Fabiani.
Thank you. Can I say to the Minister, thank you for that answer, but my constituent believes that he has recently had sight of documents in the National Archive not shown at the Land Tribunal some years previously, which in fact prove his case. And having exhausted all available funds in trying to prove his case over these years, is there any other recourse that can be offered to him?
Minister.
The member will be aware that I cannot provide specific advice. The issue in a case will always depend on the facts of that specific case. I've already indicated the option of raising a further case, raising an appeal in the Court of Session. He could go down the road of raising a further case with the Lands Tribunal or a case in the Court of Session. But if he does have a view that he has found material which shows that there is an inaccuracy in the register, he could in fact take this up directly with the Keeper of the Registers in the first instance.
Question number 7, in the name of Liam MacArthur. I note that the member is not in the chamber to ask his question. I would expect an explanation from Mr MacArthur as soon as possible. Question number 8, Claire Baker.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with NHS Scotland regarding the decision to cancel the Dunfermline-based Shed Hairdressing's contract to provide hairpieces.
Cabinet Secretary Alex Neil.
Presiding Officer, national contracts are a matter for NHS National Services Scotland, National Procurement Division. The Scottish Government has no direct involvement.
Claire Baker.
The Minister may be aware that the cancellation of this contract, if it goes ahead, it will greatly diminish the service being offered in Fife, only leaving options of travelling or mail order, both of which are inappropriate or not possible for many clients. Disabled access criteria is the issue that has been highlighted, but the salon is DDA compliant. It has the trust and confidence of clients. And while I appreciate the Cabinet Secretary's response on the Scottish Government's role in this, I would urge him to do all he can to reverse this decision.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I am happy to write to the member, but I should point out that Sheds Hairdressing, based in Dunfermline, did not tender for the new contract. They were put forward as an agent for A&A Studios, which is one of the successful tenderers. So I think the member may have a total misunderstanding of what the contractual position is. I am happy to write to her and explain it.
Willie Rennie.
I've had numerous pieces of correspondence from constituents about this, including from Sue Cumming, who said, "I am disabled and I would definitely prefer to have a talented and caring hairdresser like Doogie see me at home than struggle with the journey to Edinburgh." When it clearly has an impact on patients and customers like that, does the Minister not feel he's got a responsibility to investigate why we're in this position?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I am happy to investigate why that has happened, but of course, like this tender, like every other tender, has to go through EU procurement rules. And the rules said this contract had to go out to tender. And if the company did not tender for the contract, then it's fairly straightforward. They could not win a contract they did not tender for. They were an agent for another tenderer who was a successful tenderer for that contract. And therefore, I am happy to refer this to members and to provide them with detailed information, because I think there is a misunderstanding about the contractual position.
Helen Eadie.
Minister, meet with MSPs concerned, because I too have had representations not just from this particular company but from an Edinburgh-based company that had to close its doors. And the fact is that your officials offered a company in Falkirk, an agent in Falkirk, a chairlift, but didn't offer Sheds in Dunfermline. Why is one member being treated with a degree of equity and the other one not?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the obvious question in my mind is why A&A Studios and Sheds Hairdressing is an agent under the contract for A&A Studios, why they are not offering the service. But I am more than happy to arrange to meet members from Fife so that we can try and get this matter bottomed out.
Question number 9, Fiona MacLeod.
To ask the Scottish Government what procedures are in place for funeral directors to attain and retain their accreditation.
Cabinet Secretary Alex Neil.
Presiding Officer, information on the accreditation of funeral directors, which are private sector organisations, isn't held by the Scottish Government.
Fiona MacLeod.
I wonder if that won't help me with my next question. Cabinet Secretary, I was going to ask if there were plans for an information or training campaign for funeral directors before the full implementation of the Certification of Death Scotland Act 2011. This follows some confusion that has caused constituents of mine a great deal of anguish at a difficult time.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the trade body, the National Association of Funeral Directors, is already represented on the Death Certification National Advisory Group, which is directing the implementation of the work. More specifically, the Association is also working with the Scottish Government, the Institute of Cemetery and Crematorium Management and the Federation of Burial and Cremation Authorities to ensure there is awareness raising and relevant guidance provided to the industry in advance of national implementation of the Act.
Question number 10, James Donnan.
To ask the Scottish Government what impact the Save the Children report, State of the World's Mothers 2013, will have on its early years strategy.
Minister Aileen Campbell.
The Scottish Government welcomes the report from Save the Children and the focus that it brings to the importance of high-quality support for women and their children. Our early years framework clearly sets out the step we need to help set Scotland on the path towards being the best place in the world to grow up. Our multi-agency Early Years Collaborative, which brings together partners from across Civic Scotland to deliver with and for our children and families, is part of this activity. Indeed, one of the Collaborative's 3 stretch aims is to reduce stillbirth and infant mortality here in Scotland.
James Donnan.
Thank the Minister for that answer. Will the Minister join with me in congratulating Finland on being named the best country in the world to become a mother? Does she share my disappointment that the United Kingdom has fallen from joint 10th to 24th? And can she outline what steps the Scottish Government can take with the powers that it has to emulate the work being done in Finland and other small independent countries to make Scotland the best country in the world to become a mother?
Minister.
Yes, I will join the member in congratulating Finland in being named the best country in the world to become a mother. And I also note with interest the progress that has been made by Finland, a small, independent country in Northern Europe in full control of its own destiny, an example for us all. The report raises many issues that relate to inequality, particularly social, economic and health inequalities. And we can do what we can to effectively tackle persistent inequality in Scotland, but do so with one hand tied behind our back. An opportunity to create a fairer country presents itself next year. Order. Yes to emulating Finland, yes to a fairer society, and yes to being in charge of our own affairs through independence.